It is Health Diary. My name is Gladys Kashanjan. We're coming to you from the Emory Hotel here in Nairobi. Now, our conversation today, retinoblastoma. This is a rare form of cancer, but commonly found in children. Now, just reading up on it, the American Cancer Society puts the success rate of treating this cancer at between 95% and 99%. Now, unfortunately, that success rate reduces drastically, especially in our setting, because there is a late diagnosis, and of course that means subsequent late treatment. So what is retinoblastoma? Why do we have so much of it in Kenya, and why are we losing more children to it? Well, those answers coming your way right after the fact of the matter. Retinoblastoma is an eye cancer that rapidly develops in the retina, which is the light-detecting tissue of the eye. It can occur in one or both eyes, and it commonly affects children, but can also rarely occur in adults. Children with the inherited form of retinoblastoma tend to develop the disease at an earlier age. Treatment includes chemotherapy, radiation, and laser therapy. Retinoblastoma is almost always curable, especially if it hasn't spread beyond the eye.
When I thought I couldn't make it, see, I had my trials when my bills dried my eyes. I'm Eunice Wanjiro Wanja. I'm 23 years old. It was discovered back in 1998 when I was just 2 years and a few months. It was hard because I used to see myself different from others and no one wanted to be next to me. So some encouragement from my mom, she took me to a certain ward. There were other kids worse than me. And I had I stopped going to school because of this. I used to hide myself. They called me names like kona macho ya mbuzi, usinikaribie, ona huyu, utatuambukiza. All my primary life and high school life, I never had any deskmate because they thought it was a disease that can, go around affecting people. So I never had any deskmate. My deskmate were the teachers. I had to see a therapist for that reason for some few days, and I had to accept it and be strong. It happened at some point I went for an interview, and the man that, was interviewing other people insulted me according to my physical appearance.
What did he say?
He said, "We hata unaweza fanyia nani kazi? Ona vile unakaa." And, he threw away my CV to the dustbin. I did some checkups. I mean, it's necessary because I have to know whether there's a change or not. Yes, and I follow the doctor's advice, and I just live like my daily life, accepting myself.
So retinoblastoma, a very rare cancer but very common in children. We get to know more about it, and to help us do that, I have with me Dr. Doreen Karimi, who is a pediatric oncologist from the Gertrude's Hospital, and of course Agnes Minor, who is a survivor of retinoblastoma and also has a child who is we can say healing from it now because she's gone through the surgery of the same. Well, Dr. let me start off with you. As I said, it is a rare form of cancer, but it actually is found in children. Why in children?
Blastoma in medical terms means immature. So a lot of the times you notice even the retinoblastoma tumor itself is only found in a certain age group. We don't see it very commonly above the age of 5 because a lot of these tissues develop and they mature with time, and then you don't see these tumors at that age.
And what causes it at such a young age?
Every cell in the body has something called a DNA, and that DNA carries genes, and these genes are constantly dividing. And in the process of dividing, being a very complex process, they can actually have a wrong message happen. And what happens, the body has a way of detecting this cell doesn't look great, these genes don't look great, so it's either you repair or you die. Now, one of the genes that does that is retinoblastoma gene. So if it occurs while the baby already was in the mommy's tummy, then that's the one we actually say it's the non-hereditary type of retinoblastoma. But if already by the time the baby was being formed, there was a mutation, then that's the one we call the hereditary retinoblastoma. And that baby has the potential also to spread that gene to their children. The non-hereditary form, then what happens is it doesn't have to necessarily be spread onto the offspring of that child.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So for you, Agnes, I mean, you're a survivor of retinoblastoma. Do you have retinoblastoma in your family?
No,
Your husband's family?
no.
Uh-huh.
It was only me.
But now you have a child who has it.
Yeah.
Have the doctors explained to you that probably it was the hereditary type or the non-hereditary type?
They told me probably it was the hereditary type. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe she could have got it from me.
What happened here?
So what could have happened in either of her parents, the gene could have been there, and probably they could have been the initial ones who had what we call the germ cells getting the mutation. So when they get their children, now thereafter, they actually end up giving that gene to their children. And some of their children have like a 45% chance of actually developing the disease. Now, in Agnes's case, she now carries the genes, and these genes can be spread to her children, and that's how she ends up having a baby who gets retinoblastoma. Now, for Stephanie, who has the hereditary form, also when she gets children, she's at risk of having that gene go on and go on and go on.
Okay, so Agnes, when did your parents tell you were diagnosed with retinoblastoma?
I think around 6 months. Yeah, I think they took me to the hospital at the age of 8 months. Yeah, so it's around that period.
And during that time, people didn't know much about retinoblastoma, right?
It was just by God's grace. She went to the hospital and they diagnosed it.
But now your daughter was diagnosed at how many weeks?
At 5 weeks.
And maybe it's because you were keen on it?
I wasn't keen on it because I didn't know it was it. So it was just, I checked and I saw one eye was not the same with the other one, and I got concerned.
And what was different?
You see, when it's at night, you can see the people, it's big, it grows big. So when I just looked direct in the light, I saw it was brown, and you could see white thing inside, but the other one was black and could not turn.
It could not turn?
Yeah, it couldn't change color, but the one was changing from black to brown.
What are the obvious symptoms of retinoblastoma?
This is something we'd want to advise Agnes and also her future offspring, that we want to examine this baby even before she notices anything. But for us out there, as caregivers and also parents and doctors, what we need to be looking really for is to examine and check for that eye white reflex, because it's still late. Means we can't save the eye, but it's still a sign that is very common. It can be confused for cataracts, but the cataract, if you actually know as a doctor, it's actually a problem with the lens of the eye. But the retinoblastoma is in the eye. Glaucoma tends to appear with pain.
Yeah.
And so some of the retinoblastomas also can present with a bit of pain in the red, painful eye.
And a sensitivity to light?
And sensitivity to light.
Yes.
So that again can be, and that's why when we actually see these children, we send them to the ophthalmologist. And what the ophthalmologist does is also to look through the eye and even examine more calmly when the baby is not fighting under anesthesia.
If you may please remove your specs just for a moment so that we can see the difference.
Actually, what you're seeing on Agnes today, she has what we call a prosthesis. So we actually removed her eye, and then we put something we call an implant. and over the implant we put a prosthesis, so that at least it restores the symmetry of the eye. And I'm sure Agnes can tell you that they did that for her daughter, and sometimes you can't even tell that they have. So most of the time what we would do is we put that prosthesis, it looks a little glassy, and that's the only way you would be able to tell.
This is very impressive. You actually cannot tell the difference.
True. Yeah, and she's such a beautiful lady.
Yes, she is.
If she crosses on the streets, you wouldn't even tell that she has a prosthesis.
Agnes, when the baby was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, how did you feel?
Oh, it was a shock. It really tortured me at first because it was this big name and you're like, hey, you have cancer, and you're like, oh, no way. So it was such a strong news to me and also to the family.
You talked about the inherited and the one that's not hereditary. Is there a way to stop it from, you know, occurring in the child?
Unfortunately, no, because most of the time, initially before a family is diagnosed to have a child who has retinoblastoma, both parents are completely unaware that they carry the gene. And for us to be able to do that, we would have had to do something called genetic testing. And we don't do that most of the time. So usually what will happen is we have a family, they have a child who is affected, and whether it's the hereditary or the non-hereditary form, part of treatment, and I need to emphasize that part of treatment is doing genetic testing, is genetic counseling and testing, because that's the only way parents will get to know that yes, there is a hereditary form, and the two are slightly different. You might not completely say this is it, but you notice the hereditary form tends to appear much earlier. Most of them are diagnosed before the age of 1. So any family that has a child who has retinoblastoma before the age of 1, most likely that's the hereditary form. They tend to have both eyes being affected. So even when one eye presents first, we are keenly watching on the other eye because you know they're at risk of getting the tumor in the other eye. So when we see that, then we know this is most likely the hereditary form, and we counsel the parents, and the next thing is we test them to know who is carrying the retinoblastoma gene. And from there, parents then have a choice. Do we want to still, because there's still a 45% chance you can get, but there's still almost 55% chance your child might escape without the gene.
Okay, so the conversation is retinoblastoma. It is a common cancer in children, but it also rarely occurs in adults. You keep saying that it rarely occurs beyond the age of 5. Why?
There are certain tumors or cancers we see that are very, they're only found in children. We could say almost only found in children, because some adults may get some of these tumors, but when you look at it, it's because some of these tissues did not mature and they remained in the system, but they are not supposed to be that way. But you find retinoblastoma is commoner before the age of 5 because these tissues are still developing, they're still dividing, and they have the potential to get that mutation and then can result in retinoblastoma. Now, what happens is retinoblastoma is also a very interesting disease because that retinoblastoma gene is actually like a gatekeeper. And what we found, even when we have that mutation, is that you become susceptible to getting other tumors which can present in adults. So you find when you already have the mutation, especially the hereditary form, you need to keep going for regular screening.
How often have you gone to hospital even after they did the surgery and you were free of retinoblastoma?
Yeah, for the eyes I've done early this year, in fact.
And for your child?
Every 3 weeks.
Because her daughter had what we call bilateral retinoblastoma. That means it's actually in both eyes. So that what the ophthalmologist does when they're examining under anesthesia is to determine which eye is affected most. So the eye that was affected most, the left eye, had to undergo something where we remove the eyeball and examine it now and take it to the lab to see how far. But the other eye, the right eye, has been preserved, and it's actually getting some form of therapies we call focal therapies. So they actually are very targeted. They are going to deliver therapy into the eye. And we can do that using either by freezing it, we call it cryotherapy, or generating heat, and we can use laser energy to get heat and burn off the bad cells. So what she's telling you, the other eye as a scar is a dead tissue that has fallen. But the aim is to try at least and preserve vision and the globe on the other eye that she has.
Yeah. So Agnes, seeing your daughter go through the same thing you went through, what was going through your mind?
It's very challenging, very emotional, because, okay, you just like, oh, why me, or why this, why this? But it's okay, you just keep encouraged. And watching my child grow, I'm very positive, by the way, and I know she's going to pull through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And having had it, and now your daughter has it,
Yeah.
I can imagine there are people who whisper at the corner wondering, Nini mbaya na wale? What's going on with them? The stigma around it.
There are positivity, there are negativity. You cannot all find positive people, and they are not all negative. So some people encourage you and tell you, oh, God is good, it's better your child, mine has this and this. And some are just negative. Even your child has, so meaning everybody will have.
Having a child and a parent seeing and watching their child lose an eye is not an easy thing. And some parents have actually said no and run away with their children. So a lot of counseling needs to go in. And fortunately these days, the way we are treating retinoblastoma, before we would do the removal of the eye, then we would plan once again to come and fix the prosthesis. But now actually most of the time we remove the eye and fix the prosthesis there. And it's done so well that actually if you look at the child, you can't tell the difference.
I mean, Agnes here is a testimony.
Yeah, so it's done so well, and that has helped a lot of parents. So what we do when we get a child who has retinoblastoma and we need to have the enucleation done or removal of the eye, we actually show a picture of another child and say, can you tell which eye had the disease? And they say, no, we can't. And we say, this is what we want to do for your child.
Now, treatment is definitely key to retinoblastoma. That's why Agnes is here as a survivor, and now your daughter. But there's a cost to it. How does that look like?
We thank God for the insurances. They are really supporting.
Private or NHIF?
NHIF, to be precise. NHIF is really helping those kids now, because before then, you'll find that the ward was so congested. By the time they intervened, there's a very big improvement.
Now, Daktari, there are people who are in the mashinani, have nothing to their name, and they have a child who is in need. How do their kids get help?
Now, with the way the government or the national cancer strategy that we have is that actually a child can be referred from a health center, which is probably level 2 facility, all the way to a tertiary center like Kenyatta or any of the other public hospitals, because we want to save on time. Because our biggest challenge with cancer in children in Kenya is late presentation. NHIF really helps, whether in the public or in the private sector, it really helps, and it's taking care a lot of the burden of cancer therapy from the parents. So up to now, it's the only insurer that I know that actually takes almost the whole burden off and takes care of radiation, takes care of the medication, takes care of surgery.
Okay, so Agnes, what would you like to tell the society at large in as far as understanding people living with this condition and also getting to get the right help on time?
Many parents are hiding their children. You're ashamed of your child. That's a blessing from God. Remember, there are people crying out there who don't have children, but God gave you that favor to have a child. So don't hide your child, and kindly follow up with the clinics because if you follow up your clinics, you'll do very well. And also, I at least at births, those people, okay, when you go to deliver in the hospital, they take that keenness of checking the eyes. So just advise parents, if you see anything, any change in your child, maybe the eyes, when she wakes up, they're red, just consult, and you just get help.
As healthcare providers, as Agnes has said, please look into that eye. You just need to shine a torch, and it takes you just about 30 seconds, and you can be able to tell something is not right, and refer this child to the ophthalmologist, who then examine, and they'll be able to decide, is this cataract, is it not, is it retinoblastoma, and then we take therapy from there. And it's also our duty as healthcare providers to teach our parents what to expect. And I'm hoping that, I know we are very short-staffed in terms of healthcare practitioners, but I hope that we get to a level where we can be able to regularly examine the eye thoroughly, like they do in the West. Because in the West, retinoblastoma is 98% curable, and curable having preserved the globe, which is the eye, and preserved vision.
Very well said. Dr. Doreen Karimi, pediatric oncologist, and of course, Agnes Minor, who is a retinoblastoma survivor and has a 1-year-old who is also a survivor, and a great testimony that you actually can beat this. Well, the conversation has been retinoblastoma. So many challenges put out there to us as a society, and more so to the healthcare providers. Time now for the health tip.
Breathing while you're swimming is extremely crucial because you're using your muscles, and swimming is one of those sports that you use many muscles at the same time. So do not hold your breath. That's the first thing. A lot of us swim, we close our mouth so hard, tightly. You want to sort of preserve what is in there. What that does is get fatigued very quickly. So you want to breathe out when your head is inside the water. Always put your head inside the water up to around forehead level. If it's freestyle, if it's backstroke, same level but on the back side. If it is butterfly as well, forehead level. For breaststroke, we try as much as possible to put the entire head, your entire head inside the water. So when your head goes in, you breathe out with your mouth. When your head comes up for air, you open your mouth like a fish. Just the way a fish opens up its mouth. Open up your mouth and get in some air.
It has been Health Diary. Thank you for your company throughout the program. My name is Gladys Gashanja, and we've been coming to you from the Emory Hotel here in Nairobi. And yes, we see your questions and your comments coming through on our social media handles. Until next time, see you. Kidogo nitoe kiatu nishikilie hapa.